Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin Chouinard. I am here recording on a Sunday night with Glen Willis and Tyler Jones after the Hawks win over the Portland Trailblazers. And Tyler, should Jonathan Kuminga be the Eastern Conference Player of the Week?
He's got to be considered, doesn't he? I mean, based on his numbers and the winning, but we'll see. I don't know. He's been great. Um, said it on said it on Blue Sky and Twitter that I think the biggest thing Kuminga is bringing to the team on both ends right now is his defense, is his physical, just raw physical strength, and like I really do believe that factor, that combination of strength and athleticism, is just taking so much pressure off of everybody else on the team. Like, because he has to be accounted for really on both ends. Like, you're not going to overpower him on offense when he's defending you, and then on the other end, like, I mean, he's just an absolute train getting downhill, and like he's got nice touch around. He can finish around the rim through contact. Kevin, how many times we've been doing podcasts? How many times I've been saying this over and over about how the Hawks can't finish through contact. It's been their biggest weakness going since even during the peak years of the Trae Young era. Like, it's been a massive flaw basically for this team. They don't have the ability to drive and then finish through contact. Even John Collins struggled with that, and he was one of the best finishers on the team. Onyeka Okongwu, for as great as he's been as a finisher around the rim, it's all floaters. It's all hook shots. It's never just power, putting your shoulder into somebody, going through them, and then finishing. Jalen Johnson, it's probably the weakest aspect of his offensive game, is playing through contact consistently and getting to the front of the rim and finishing layups. Dyson Daniels avoids contact when he's driving. Kuminga embraces contact, and that just demands attention from defenses. Defenders have to be aware of him because he will go through you if you're not physically prepared. It makes his reads a lot easier compared to everybody else offensively as well. Like, he's making the basic reads on offense, and it's really leading to some quality passes that you talked about on Twitter, Kevin. So, like, I mean, he's been fantastic. We'll see if he places in player of the week, but I'm just one last thing. Thank you, Warriors, like that. Truly,
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of kidding because it's probably going to be like Tyrese Maxey or one of like any number of Hornets because the Hornets just can't lose a game when they have everybody healthy. But boy, he has made a huge impact, and I like what you've pointed out about the domino effect because it's like if you have to put your most physical defender on him, and everybody gets sort of like one tier below in terms of physicality matched on them, it kind of evens everything out for them to be able to deal with the matchups that they have.
I mean, let's take tonight for example. Under no circumstance was Vit Krejci going to guard Kuminga, and so that forces you defensively to have to cover for Vit Krejci. That makes everybody's game just a lot easier. Like, okay, they have to, so we can just involve Kuminga and wherever Vit Krejci is on the floor, get the matchup we want, whether it's Kuminga or somebody else, and attack Vit Krejci getting downhill. And like it makes the second unit so much more deadly, so much more like teams don't have the depth to handle this level of physical force that's coming their way. And then, like I said, at the same time, defensively, because Ricochet can, like, he doesn't have to, he's not guarding bigger guys, he's guarding smaller guys. He's able to have more of a physical impact on the game. Like, he's able to just be there more physically because he's not the biggest wing on the floor. Like, that's been massive for him defensively. I know people have their complaints about his offense, but his defense with Kuminga has been really, it has shown through. And like, I'm telling you, the Hawks do not care about any of the stuff that goes on Twitter. They care about results, and the Kuminga Ricochet pairing has been fantastic.
Glenn, to totally shift gears, just because it's fresh on my mind, I was asking Quinn Snyder tonight about Jock Landale's post game,
Yeah.
like not post game like interview, like post game like low post game.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering, like, over the course of the 3, 4 weeks that he's been here, like, how has that ramped up? How, in what situations do the Hawks get to it? What benefits does it provide? Because until he got here with Kristaps out, they didn't really have a low post game.
No. No, they'd run a couple plays a game when Chris Stepps would play, like he'd be in that mid post on the left
Oh,
side of the
for
floor.
Kristaps, I'm saying
Yeah.
without
Right,
Kristaps,
for
they
sure.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean when he gets a smaller guy on him, he goes right to the front of the rim. Just automatically. He just goes right to the front of the rim, pins him, and wants the ball. And like, give me the ball. And that's what he should do. And when he gets that mismatch. And he did that, I don't know, he got made 3 or 4, 5, I don't remember how many plays he made down there right in front of the rim today. But even did with Klingon, he was crafty. Klingon's a big dude. It's interesting to watch the Trailblazers try to play defense with a drop center when Onyeka's living outside the 3-point line the whole game. That was interesting to watch. But yeah, yeah, he's been good. I mean, defensively, we've talked about the fact that he doesn't have a lot of verticality, but he's crafty. He knows how to kind of be physical and try to take space away. So he knows what he's good at and can do. But no, he gets a small guy and he marches his ass right down the front of the rim and is like, give me the ball. So
We'll see about the defense with these bench units. Basically, I'm talking about the Landale, Ricochet, Kuminga lineups, but like those two wings are covering a lot for Landale's flaws, and it allows for Landale to do what he does best, which is be physical, which is be strong, not give up offensive rebound position. So like I really feel like Ansi kind of rebuilt this team on the fly here, and like this is we'll see when they play tougher competition. But I mean, the thing is, the schedule is pretty light for the next 2 weeks or so. So they're probably going to have more games like this where they're just absolutely brutalizing teams physically. So I don't know. I really do think this is like the Hawks are good again with what Kuminga is providing on both ends right now.
Yeah, I mean, I probably said this on the last podcast, but like when it's Landale Kuminga, Kuminga has that ability to be that third pick and roll defender at the rim and still close out to the corner and have it be a reasonably good contest. Like it's not a gimme anymore. It's not, for teams constantly try to pick on bad defenders from the weak side corner, and we saw Sadiq Bey struggle in that role and Garrison Matthews struggle in that role, but like so many of the times that you're trying to pick on like Kispert Landale and pick and roll, well, the Hawks kind of get their choice of who they want in that weak side corner, and if it's Zach or if it's Kuminga, like those are both speedy enough and lengthy enough and savvy enough defenders to kind of be two places at once and be useful and not just be the type of defender that can only take away one or the other.
yeah, yeah. And Quinn is leaning into more balanced lineups across the game now than he could before the trade deadline. So he's putting enough defense out there. He's playing Gabe Vincent, which I'm a huge fan of. He only played 11 minutes a day, but he was impactful on the ball, creating ball pressure, all the stuff that he does. And there'll be other games where they might need a lot more of him, depending upon kind of just what the opponent is. But no, I'm happy to see Quinn finding more balance across the lineups throughout the game.
Yeah, I mean the options have improved. Um, what did you think of Nikhil Alexander Walker in his return?
I mean, he was in the killer, 1 for 4 from 3. CJ was on ball a lot today, like a lot today, and he was pretty good today. So that helps. And also, Jalen didn't look comfortable to me. He didn't look like he really wanted to kind of go create offense in his shots and stuff like that. But he still had 8 rebounds and 8 assists. He still was productive in that area. I was kind of when they had a big lead, I was like, why don't they just take Jalen out? They don't need to be exposing him. But what do I know? But they just they played hard. They played competitively. They played with effort. And the thing that we've talked about all season long is for them to make a push towards the sixth seed, if that's something that, they have a pretty soft schedule here for a while. They're gonna have to play with more consistency than they have at any other point in the season. We've talked about that. And today that they were consistent from the beginning to the end of the game. I thought, there were still a couple times when they had multiple bad defenders on the floor, guys got to the rim, but it seemed like they got it fixed. It wasn't one of those things that just kept persisting. But this is still a new group of players still learning to play with each other. And I think Quinn has kind of figured out what he wants to do for his first unit, second unit, and it's nice to have two games against a terrible Wizards team just to kind of have some integration and have guys kind of feel each other out. And then today, I mean, Portland plays hard, and they're a young team. They were missing key guys today, obviously,
Yes.
but they play hard. And it's good to see the Hawks just kind of stay focused and control the game beginning to end.
Tyler, in this one, Jalen Johnson struggled, but why weren't the Hawks able to get him freer? I guess in a sense, anytime Onyeka was up near the top of the key, he's pretty much up there by himself, right? They're giving him a huge cushion with Klingon.
Yeah,
Why couldn't
but
they use Onyeka as a screener to get Tumani Kamara off Jalen Johnson so that Jalen Johnson could have a little bit of an on ramp into some of his actions?
well, I thought Jalen was just too soft physically, offensively. Like he was letting Portland get into his body too much and not, you know, fighting back a little bit more. He could have fought back. I think he got frustrated by the foul calls and kind of it sapped his aggression a little bit there. But a lot of it was Portland's, defensive scheme. Like they were not going to let Jalen Johnson get downhill on them. And so they were like, all right, Okongwu, take as many threes as you want. It's the second time they've done this. They got away with it the first time they played Portland, and then Okongwu just absolutely buried them. So like it didn't matter. I like I think the Hawk like for Jalen to have gotten going more, particularly with the starting units, probably would have required Portland to switch up their defensive scheme, basically, because like it is tough. Like if Jalen still got to work on his in between games, still has to work on some other stuff. I thought Matisse Thybulle was bothering him a bit too much because uh, he was like lackadaisical with the ball when Matisse is one of the best at just poking the ball away and stuff like that. So I just think Jalen couldn't find a rhythm. Again, Portland's a good defensive team. I know they're not ranked as an upper echelon defensive team, but they have good defensive structure. They have good defensive players, and they have good defensive principles. And so like, and I've said this often, Jalen struggles oftentimes when he's matched up against like sized guys, and like Portland could throw wave after wave after wave of bigger basketball players. The counter for the Hawks was like, okay, we'll just go with somebody else. Like we have other options. We can work with Nikhil here. I thought CJ McCollum. I I I found it interesting that Quinn started CJ against a bigger Portland team, and I felt like he primarily did this because he wanted to shoot Klingon out of the game. And that's basically what the Hawks did. The
Yep.
Hawks just won the math game offensively, and so like the math game required that Jalen be more facilitator than a scorer. And so like it was a very this is how the Boston Celtics play the Atlanta Hawks type of basketball game for the long-term ATL 29 listeners. So I just think the Hawks were like, all right, if they're not going to play a different coverage scheme, we're just going to shoot the ball. Like we're just going to have a Congo shoot uh, wide open three after wide open three and bury this team. Like a Congo's that level of shooter that demands more respect than what the Trailblazers were doing. Like I think they didn't have another option, unfortunately, based on Robert Williams not playing. That's why I was kind of comfortable. I knew the Hawks were probably going to win pretty comfortably, just primarily because they didn't have another option to go to, and Klingon's limited on the perimeter. So I just think it was a schematic issue that led to Jalen not having as productive as night as you would think he would, considering the Hawks won by 34 points, but like I just think that the tactical scheme required Jalen to do less than what we're used to seeing from him.
When Onyeka was asked tonight about, when he was making threes, he was going past the Portland bench and holding out however many fingers of threes that he had made to that point. And when he was asked about it, he said that he knows one of the assistant coaches, and he was saying, when are you going to switch coverages? When are you going to switch coverages so that this is guarded? And they really didn't, but there was some stuff at the end of the half. Glenn, what was that zone that they were playing at the end of the first half for like the last 3-4 minutes? Was that like a 1-3-1? What was that?
I mean, I couldn't quite figure out like what their configuration was. It's because it looked different on different
Yes, it
possessions.
did.
Yeah. So, but I mean, sometimes it looked like a 2-3. Sometimes it looked like a little bit more like a 1-2-2. Like the coaches will call it 12. The 1-2-2 is
Sure.
more. It's called 12. And so I thought they were getting into different configurations depending on who the Hawks had on the floor. But I mean, it's kind of funny. I always say in the NBA, it's like the way you generate threes against the zone is completely different than when you're playing man. I mean, it's a completely different process, it's an upside down
Right.
process. But in this case, like the Hawks didn't like just stop moving the ball. They worked through it, and 90% of the reason that an NBA coach will put his team to his zone is when his team's in foul trouble and he's trying to avoid fouls, preserve fouls, and not have, because when you're defending on man, you're being physical and stuff like that. I mean, Klingon had 3 fouls in the first quarter, I think it was, right? And
Yeah.
and so coaches when the coach is like, I got to keep my guys clean from a foul standpoint, we're gonna go to zone and try to back out of risk of fouling. And I think that's what Splitter did today. They eventually got back to man in the second half. But Jalen was working there at the nail. It was kind of the connector in that setup. But they were running uh, different versions of zone depending upon who the Hawks had on the floor.
What are you expecting for this matchup with Milwaukee, which is kind of an important matchup for the Hawks for a number of reasons moving forward? One, just trying to get playoff seeding. Two, trying to kill Milwaukee's playoff seeding, both for the playoff seeding and for the potential for lottery ping pong balls. But given who the Bucks have at this point, like how do the Hawks match up with the Bucks?
I mean, this is a different Hawks team than the last one the Bucks played. I mean, it's a very different team. Like I said earlier, there's more balance there. I think Kuminga is hugely helpful in this matchup. Just Hawks have more, like Tyler said earlier, they just have more physicality now than they did before. And you hope that's on Wednesday, so you hope that Jalen gets 2 whole days to hopefully get that hip feeling a little bit better. Because he looked diminished today to me when he was playing. Look, so I mean, I still if you want to respect the fact that he went out and took the floor and played. But I think I think it was not an accident at all that CJ was running the offense for most of the game. I don't because I just think Jalen didn't have the juice for today. But hopefully on Wednesday night he'll be in better shape and recovering. But I mean, you go on the road and games can be weird sometimes, but the Bucks are not good. Right now they're not playing good basketball right now. But you got to respect your opponent in every game, no matter who it is. And that's what the Hawks have to do. They played like adults today, and they played with consistency today. They played responsibly today. They played with accountability today. And that has been up until the last few weeks. That has been a really up and down dynamic across this team. Just getting down 15 points in the first quarter. We all remember the first 2 months of the season where they were get buried the first quarter, pretty regularly. Today they came out and just played smart, connected, unselfish basketball, and that's what they have to keep leaning into. So I mean, I feel good about that game and that matchup. That's out there for Wednesday night. But like I said, they're still an NBA team, and you got to respect your opponent.
You mentioned that CJ was running the offense, and maybe that had something to do with Jalen being hurt. But I would say, like, if I'm playing against a defense that is a drop defense and it's sort of a deep drop defense with somebody who is an elite rim protector, like CJ is one of the best. It's like if you're going to have him on a roster, like one of the things you want to have him for is just his ability to find that space in a drop coverage between the person who's chasing behind him and the big person who's up in front of him. Like when he gets into that in between area, like he's just such a good controller of his own space to know where things lie and what opportunities are there when lots of other ball handlers would get lost and end up in the wrong spot.
Yeah, I mean, he was thinking pick and rolls all day today, right? He put his defender on his back, using deceleration and then getting acceleration back and getting to that space. I mean, he's so good at that stuff. Really, really good at that stuff.
One of the best. He's a Jedi at that. Now, Tyler, when you look at this Hawks team and you say, okay, they're beating these bad teams and they have all these new pieces, like what is the opportunity for growth? What do they have to get better at in the next couple of weeks when the schedule is kind of thin and they have the opportunity to really sort some things out?
Um, Probably primarily turnovers and decision making. I thought the worst aspects of the game tonight, in particular, was when they were just throwing the ball around a little bit, not being careful with the basketball, and or taking just bad shots, not necessarily reading the floor. I thought Nikhil took a couple of hero shots, particularly in the first half, that were just that led to fast break opportunities for the Trailblazers on the other end. So I just think overall, like just smarter decision making and just being more aware of what to look what now that you have Kuminga, what you should be looking for as an offense on a possession to possession basis, if that makes sense. Because Kuminga is a matchup problem. Like if you put a smaller defender on him, he's going to put them under the rim. And so you need to use that every time you can and use that weapon while he's on the floor with you to really maximize your possessions. Combined with, I thought the Jalen Kuminga lineups were a little clunky offensively. It was better in the second half, and we'll see how they look going forward. Again, I think part of it is that the Trailblazers offensively were never going to threaten them, if that makes sense. So, it's less pressure on them offensively. I think if they play a more impactful defensive team, particularly with those two guys on the floor at the same time, considering what their strengths and weaknesses are, we'll see if they're able to find something. Because I do think there is something there to be had on both ends. But I think that pairing in particular is going to take more time because they both want to play with the ball in their hands, if that makes sense. So let's see how they work off of each other. I think that's probably the one area where it's like these are probably your two most physically gifted, talented players on the team. Let's see if they can work some chemistry together off the ball to really juice this Hawks team and really accelerate what they can be going forward.
Glenn, what do you think is sort of the opportunity for growth if you try to have some objectives for this team over the next couple of weeks?
I mean, I still think when they're playing with structure defensively, that using your defense to create offense is something that they have to just continue to emphasize. Right. And that require, like we've talked about, for that requires there to be balance, defensive balance across the whole game. Um, Jalen and Kuminga in transitions, and that's a nightmare for opposing teams. Both of those guys can really get up and down the floor. And Jalen's, so good with his, hit ahead passes and all that sort of stuff. I thought Kuminga showed up more as a rebounder today than he had some other games. I thought he was a little bit more engaged in that part of his play. But yeah, I mean, Jalen. I mean, we're still watching Jalen learn how to run an offense. That's a process that is still at work. And so today I thought it was very smart to let CJ kind of run things and take some workload off of Jalen. But that still has to be maintained as a priority because that you're building around him, right? But so I think CJ in the starting lineup to take some workload off of Jalen makes a lot of sense. Um, I still want to see Quinn in a close game. I still want to see Quinn in the last 4 or 5 minutes do offense, sub offense, defense, depending on possession and situation and context and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Jalen plays on Wednesday or what have you. I wish they would have pulled him like in the third quarter today. I don't know if that was an option, but But no, it's engagement, it's activity, it's playing hard, it's playing with real effort across the whole 48 minutes of the game that they just weren't doing that consistently enough earlier in the season. And it seems like after the All-Star break, there people the vibes are better, or whatever language you want to use. It seems, Kuminga looks like he's having a lot of fun playing on this team right now. And so you just hope that continues. And I know Hawks fans are hoping that like, hey, we're actually seeing them take a step up here, and hopefully they can just they're actually winning games at home, which they weren't doing earlier in the season. So I know these were diminished teams in these games to a degree, but it's still important to win your games at home. So for me, it all to me it just all comes back to consistency. It just really consistent effort, consistent focus, consistent accountability. That has to be what they lean into to be able to kind of hopefully make a push upward in the standings.
But I think the why we're seeing more, consistency here is that, Quinn, like if we're just being honest, Quinn's playing better basketball players.
Yep.
Like, that's just the reality of the situation. No respect to V. Krejci for what he did for the Hawks, but like no longer the Hawks playing V. Krejci, Luke Kennard, um, Keaton Wallace. Just like it's instead of those guys, it's Kuminga for like 25 plus minutes. Mo Gay, for as good as he is defensively, offensively, it's been a struggle for him. And now it's like, okay, Kuminga is not the defender that Mo Gay is. I'm not saying that. However, what he's bringing to the table is something that Mo Gay can't do, which is be physically strong. And so now, that again, like I said, it takes pressure off of Ricochet. Now he could be more of a help side defender and get some blocks and steals and stuff like that. That matters. Like instead of and like Kuminga's rebound, which has been consistently good, if you look at it, it's been really good these last couple of years, particularly this season. I think he's made some real strides. He's been consistently good at that factor. Um, his short time with the Hawks as well. Like, I mean, the type of rebounds he's getting are impressive. These are out of the zone. Doesn't matter if there's a body over him. I'm jumping right over guys and like just snagging it. So like, I really do think. Again, I just think like Kaminga like just gives this team an element. He gives his team more depth and more physicality, and that's going to allow that just takes pressure off of so many guys. Like you've seen Dyson, up the intensity a little bit more defensively. I feel like you're seeing Nikhil do the same, and you're seeing Jalen do the same. Like I think everybody like is like I think whether however people feel about Kuminga on the outside, inside that locker room, they think the world of him. And like they're looking for him. They're looking for him to get downhill. They're looking for him to score. They're looking for him to be an offensive fulcrum for this team, particularly on these second units. And I do think it was the biggest weakness of this Hawks team after Porzingis went out was basically like the offense just collapses. It doesn't matter who they're playing, what the score, like who the other opposition is. If Jalen Johnson and Dicey Daniels aren't on the floor, this team can't score. Through 3 games, again, we can talk about the quality of the opponents. I understand the Wizards are tanking. I get all that. The first game was a little bit more of an NBA team compared to the second. The Portland Trailblazers are a real team. Clean is one of the best rim protectors in the sport, and the Hawks just decimated them from wide to wide. And so, like the Blazers are big. Like they play no guards outside of like what Scoot Henderson, Drew Holiday's a tank. So I don't know if you can count him as he is a guard, but he doesn't play like one physically. So like I just think the Hawks match their level of physicality throughout the night. And I think there are a lot of teams that don't have the size to contend with the Hawks now, and you're going to see more games where they're just bigger than them, and they just go through them and they win comfortably. And now games are getting easier. We're getting more blowouts. Again, the Hawks weren't getting blowouts regardless of the competition until unless Porzingis was playing really. So like we'll see if they can continue this, but like blowouts mean something. Like you beat a team by 30 points. I don't care who you're playing against. This is the NBA, man. These guys have a lot of pride. These guys have a lot of, they if you're stepping on the NBA floor, you're playing with effort and intensity. You're getting NBA coaches, you're trying to win the game, and the Hawks are blowing them out by 30, 40 plus, that's a little different than what they were doing before.
If you consider Kaminga's career and the reported knocks on his game, I think, over the long term were, one, he's not much of a passer. And I think if you're disappointed in anything that you've seen from Kuminga as a passer in 3 games, I don't know what to tell you because it looks good to me.
Yep.
But the other one I think was shot selection.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering what you all think of what you've seen from his shot selection so far.
I mean, I think it's been fine. You know, he's not out there being like singularly like thirsty for shots. When he needs when the ball needs to be moved, he moves it. You know, when he sees Jacques at the front of the rim, he tries to get the ball to him. You know, when he breaks the paint and someone's open the corner, he makes that pass. He's playing unselfishly. And granted, the Warriors run. I mean, for years, I run everything around what Steph, right, and what Steph needs, and what kind of help that you throw out on the floor for Steph. It's hard for young players to kind of grow through that if they get. I think there's an experience where you feel pretty restricted in what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. But here, I think Quinn is empowering him, and he looks like he's having fun. But I think he's made overall just made good decisions with the basketball. And like I said, CJ can get a little thirsty, sometimes, and there's commentary about that, but he's making the right play consistently to me. And like I said, like he's not trying to just go out and get 22 shots, in the game or whatever. When the guy's over the corner, he moves the ball. When someone needs a screen, he comes and sets a screen to try to get CJ onto a lesser defender or whoever's got the ball. He's engaged and trying to be helpful and constructive, even when he's like sitting in the corner and the offense gets stuck, he'll come up and give a screen and try to unlock it. So that's been impressive. No, now when they play at some point a top 5 or 6 defense, and which makes it a lot harder. It'd be interesting to see if he still can have that level of impact. But I think it's such a gift for this team that they came out of the All-Star break with a pretty soft schedule to start to give him time and space to get integrated before they do face a really, really good team, which they're still going to face some good teams a little in a few weeks.
What do you think, Tyler?
Um, I mean, we can't talk about Kuminga's flaws and if we're not going to talk about the context in which he played in. And I think the Warriors, next to Draymond Green, Kuminga is just like if you're playing next to Draymond Green, you have to be a good catch and shoot 3-point player. That's just the reality of the situation if you're not a center. Kuminga's not a center. Kuminga is an okay catch and shoot guy, but he's not great at it. It's not catch and shoot 3-pointers are not the thing he's good at. And so, like, unless they were willing to bench, Draymond for Kuminga, I just think the context for him was really poor. And go and say combined with then they got Jimmy Butler on top of that. Now you got 2 guys who need the ball in their hands. And they were like, we're winning now, Kuminga. Sorry, you got to come off the bench because you're not making your open 3-pointers. That's where I'm like, hey, you got to trade Kuminga before you tank his value, or you got to trade Draymond. You got to get rid of Draymond. Like, it's kind of the honest situation. I look at it, if I'm a Warriors fan, I'm pissed. I'm like, because this is like, to me, look, I know it's 3 games, it's the honeymoon period, all that good stuff, but like, this is just a good basketball player. Like, he's physical, he's athletic, he finishes, he can dribble, which is important because the Hawks are able to play him alongside Corey Kispert and CJ McCollum. They're able to make that lineups work with Zachary Risache, who's a non-dribbler, primarily because Kuminga can handle the ball. And so, like, I think that's a massive skill that he wasn't able to show for the Golden State Warriors because Draymond has to handle the ball, or Draymond has no offensive value. You can't park Draymond in the corner. No teams respect him. Kuminga was a better shooter than Draymond, so he had to be in the corner. And he probably didn't like that as a player, and I think it got a little personal at the end, which is unfortunate. But I just think overall, because like it's probably for him, it's probably tough. He had his 3rd year, he was good. Like his 3rd year, he was really good. and then either he got hurt or they traded. I can't remember. He got hurt or they traded for Jimmy Butler. No, he got hurt that sometime during that year. Then the next year he comes back. He's still solid, but but when you have somebody like Steph Curry and the pressure to win is so overwhelming, Steve Kerr is like, all right, I got to look. I either have to bench Draymond Green or Jonathan Kuminga. I literally cannot play both of them because they're killing my offense. And I think he chose Draymond. And like for the last 2 years, he basically did that. I wonder who they lost in that his third year because I think they had more shooting. Like the Warriors just don't have the shooting that the Hawks have. Hawks got a lot of shooting. Where when somebody like Zachary Richie, who's like a 35% 3-point shooter, is your worst shooter that you play, basically, regardless of who else is on the floor, like you got some great. That's a great. The Hawks are a good 3-point shooting team, and so like Kaminga isn't outside of Dyson Daniels. Dyson Daniels is on tier, but like Dyson's such a
Yeah, he's
passer
unique.
line. He Dyson makes it work. Like it's
Yeah.
very it's I think the reason why the Hawks are so successful offensively with Dyson Downs, despite his lack of shooting, requires a longer analysis. We don't have time for that, but just overall, like, I just think the Hawks spacing principles are better. They run they don't have a guy, quote unquote, and it's more democratized. And so here it's like, all right, if you got the matchup, we're giving you the ball, Kaminga, like because we need you to score. Like the Hawks have lacked guys who could just take the ball into their own two hands and put the ball in the hoop. Kaminga can do that pretty well.
All right. Well, I appreciate you all taking the time to join me, and it's an interesting time to watch the Atlanta Hawks, and I guess we say goodnight, Bob.
Good night, Bob.
Goodbye.